The rooftop wind sliced across the training compound as Cadet Maria Torres dangled over the edge. Her fingers slipping, her heartbeat pounding like a war drum inside her chest. Behind her, the young recruits laughed, shoving harder, repeating a word meant to break her spirit. They thought she was weak. They thought she would fall. They thought this was just another cruel initiation. What they didn't know, what they were seconds away from discovering, was that the woman they were taunting had survived war zones they'd only seen in movies. And the moment she pulled herself back onto that roof, everything in their world would change. The training academy was built high above the desert, an isolated facility meant to strip cadets down and rebuild them into soldiers. But for Maria Torres, this was supposed to be the easy part. After years serving covertly, she had retired quietly from special operations, hoping to become an instructor. Instead, a clerical mix-up placed her with raw recruits, most barely out of high school, most eager to prove themselves, and most unable to imagine that strength could come in the shape of a woman. From the first day, the harassment began. Snickers during drills, eyes rolling when she entered the room, whispered insults echoing behind her as she walked the halls. But Maria had endured worse in foreign deserts, jungles, and oceans. She had faced mortars, ambushes, and interrogation chambers with steel in her spine. If anything, these boys' mockery reminded her how young they really were, untested, uncertain, and hiding insecurity behind arrogance still. She kept silent. Not because she was afraid, but because she was tired. On the third week, the rooftop training exercise was scheduled. The challenge was simple: cross the narrow ledge without losing balance. Maria's steps were steady, her body remembering decades of combat conditioning. Behind her, the cadets, Adams, Price, Vickers, and two others, whispered and giggled. They had been pushing boundaries all week, but today something was different. Their faces were lit with the thrill of mischief, the kind that came before a bad decision. "Look at her," Adams muttered. "Acting like she's all high and mighty." "Push her," Price replied, smirking. "Let's see if she still walks like she owns the place." Maria felt their presence before she heard their boots. A lifetime of instincts kept her alert. But before she could turn, a hand shoved her shoulder, hard. Another caught her leg, another pushed at her back. The world tilted. The horizon lunged upward. Her stomach dropped. She was airborne. For one suspended second, she felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no weight. Just wind. Then fingers scraped the ledge. Her body slammed into the wall, breath exploding from her lungs. Her hands burned as she clung, nails breaking, grit tearing into her palms. The cadets leaned over her laughing, until her eyes met theirs. Gone was the quiet, patient Maria. What stared back at them was the gaze of someone who had crawled through fire and lived. She pulled herself up, not with panic, not with desperation, but with the controlled strength of someone who had done this 100 times in training far harsher than this place. She swung a leg over the ledge, stood, and faced them, and the boys fell silent. And in that silence, for the first time, they felt something they had never associated with her: fear. Maria wiped the blood from her cheek, her breath steadying. "You think this is funny?" she asked softly. No one answered. "Good," she continued. "Then laugh when I'm done with you." What followed would reshape every one of their lives. The truth hits harder than the fall. Later that afternoon, the commanding officer summoned the rooftop cadets to the briefing hall. They entered nervously, expecting punishment, but unsure how severe. At the front of the room stood the commander, and next to him stood Maria, her uniform clean, her posture straight, her expression unreadable. The commander spoke first. "I've reviewed the security footage. What you boys did wasn't a prank. It was assault on a fellow cadet." The boys' faces turned pale. "And before I announce your consequences," the commander added, "there is something you should know. Something that might help you understand the gravity of what you've done." He turned to Maria and nodded. "Chief, if you would." The room went still. The boys blinked. "Chief." Maria stepped forward. "I didn't tell you who I was because I wanted a normal course. A clean start." Her voice carried a calm that silenced the entire hall. "But since you insisted on testing me, let's get this clear." She opened a small folder. Inside were service ribbons and certifications the boys had only seen in documentaries. "I am a retired Navy SEAL," she said. "Combat decorated, multiple deployments. I've led extraction missions, reconnaissance runs, and operations you will never read about." Gasps rippled across the room. Adams blinked hard. Price swallowed. Vickers stared at the floor. Maria continued. You didn't just shove a fellow trainee. You attacked someone who has buried friends, carried wounded soldiers across battlefields, and walked through situations far deadlier than anything you can imagine. Her voice softened. And what hurts most is not the shove, it's knowing you believe cruelty makes you strong. Silence thickened the room. The commander stepped forward. You will undergo corrective training under Chief Torres' direct supervision. No exceptions. She will be your instructor for the remainder of your program. The boy's eyes widened, but not with fear this time. With something else. Respect. Maria approached them, not with gloating or anger, but with the solemn firmness of a leader who knows young soldiers are shaped, not born. You will work harder than you ever have, she said. Not because I want revenge, but because I want to teach you what true strength looks like. What discipline is. What honor actually means. For the first time, the boys nodded sincerely. The weeks that followed forged them into a unit. Maria pushed them to their limits, not to punish but to rebuild. They learned trust. They learned respect. They learned the cost of reckless choices. And slowly, they began to understand the weight of the world Maria once carried on her back. And by the end of training, something remarkable happened. They stood taller. They moved as a team. They greeted her not with fear or shame, but gratitude. Maria Torres had come to the academy seeking peace. Instead, she found purpose again, shaping the next generation, one mistake at a time.